Hello YouTube, StuckInAPool here with some more Fire Emblem Hero stuff for you. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about super merging up units to use in your arena core team. This will be part 2 of that series. So if you didn't see the first one, this is a series where I look at characters that would be good picks to start building up to plus 10, since as we all know, high merges are kind of the key to getting higher arena scores. Also, having well-built and well-merged units make the PvE content in the game significantly easier, so I highly suggest it for that reason. Like before, I'll do 3 units of each color, with each one of the 3 representing a level of availability, or summon ability. The free-to-play tier is available at 3 to 4 stars, the dolphin tier is available at 4 to 5 stars, and the whale tier is your 5-star exclusive units. After we discuss the units and talk about building them a little bit, we'll play around with forming teams with them, just to kind of give some insight into my thoughts that I would have when putting together a team, trying to make a well-rounded team. Now before I begin, the main things that I take into account when picking these characters are their strength in the meta currently, their potential to score points in the arena, that's really based off of their BST and unit type and all that. I also consider how many valuable skills you may lose by merging them away. That's kind of commonly referred to as like their SI value. Also, I'm not going to include any seasonal units in these videos, since they tend to always have anymore they have pretty valuable skills, and also getting 11 copies of a limited time hero is difficult for even whales, unless you just have like unlimited spending. It's hard to get 11 copies of a limited time hero. So starting off here, we have our red units. For the free-to-play tier, I went ahead and went with Draug here. Now if you select Draug, you're going to be missing out on his Brave Sword, Pavis, Lunge, and Ward Armor. Draug's strengths are his high physical bulk, and he actually has a pretty decent offensive spread. He has pretty good speed for an armor. His weaknesses, of course, are his very low resistance, and of course as an armor he has low movement unless he's aided by Armor March. So that's a little tough. The build I went with here, and these builds are all pretty premium, but I'm going to suggest a few alternatives. We went with his Slaying Sword, or Slaying Edge, Refined It for Defense. We have him Pivot, Bonfire, Steady Breath, Bold Fighter, Panic Ploy, and Quick Riposte. This is the dual phase Draug. Of course, you could just make them all enemy phase oriented and just go with like Distant Counter and Quick Riposte. But honestly, as a pure physical tank, I feel like dedicating him to melee tanking is not a bad idea. For our Dolphin tier, I went with Erica. If you choose Erica, you're going to be missing out on her Pivot, Drag Back, and Hone Speed. Now Erica, her strengths are her great buff potential, and now with her special weapon she can take advantage of her own buffs to help her stats out even more. She has good speed, and overall her bulk is okay. She's kind of I'd say she has mediocre mixed bulk, but both her defense and her resistance are pretty reliable. Her weakness, her biggest issue is definitely going to be attack. She's going to need help buffing up her attack, and she's going to need specials to deal reliable damage. But with our new weapon, that's a little easier to do. The build I've given her here, it's kind of similar to the one I'm running on her now that I have her built up. Just give her buffed personal weapon. We're going to run Rally, Speed, Defense, Moonbow, Distant Counter, Wrath, Res, Tactic, and Quick Riposte. Personally, I run Rally, Defense Resistance, and Hone Speed. I'm looking forward to the day when Speed Tactic is a thing, so I'll definitely just give her Speed Tactic. But since that doesn't exist yet, I'm just going to keep Hone Speed. But this is one way to get a Tactic buff. You could also go with Defense Tactic if you really wanted to. Either one is a-okay. Now if you don't want her to be dealing with any ranged threats, you could always just run Fury and Renewal, and that way her stats are just going to be sky high with the 8 of her buffs, so all around she'll be a strong unit. For the whale tier, I went with Young Tiki. If you pick Young Tiki, you're going to miss out on Flame Tongue, Growing Flame, Armored Blow, and Breath of Life. So Tiki's strengths are overall, she has good mixed bulk. She's overall a pretty well-rounded unit. She has decent speed. She's a dragon, so of course she's going to have access to those dragon weapons. Her weaknesses, like I said, she's overall well-rounded, which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on who you talk to. Her attack is pretty mediocre, so, you know, she's not going to be doing a lot of damage unless she gets a special off. She kind of leans on it a little bit more than others. And of course, as a dragon, she is weak to falchions, which have gained a little more relevance recently, so you have to look out for that. The build I've given her here, we're going to give her Lightning Breath, we're going to refine it for speed. It may not be enough to help her get any doubles, but it can help her avoid some. Reposition, Aether, Warding Breath, Quick Riposte, Attack Smoke, and Distant Defense. If you don't want to run Warding Breath, you could also just run Close Defense or like a stance skill in the A slot. And if you do that, I would suggest getting rid of Aether for a lower cooldown special. And you could always switch out Attack Smoke for like a Threaten. Moving on to our blue units. For the free-to-play tier, I've selected Female Corrin. If you pick Female Corrin, you're going to miss out on Dark Breath, Draconic Aura, Seal Resistance, and Hone Attack. So Corrin's strengths are, she has pretty good physical bulk, good defense, pretty good speed, good health. She also, like Tiki, has access to dragon weapons, which is always a plus. Her weaknesses, though, her resistance is pretty bad, her attack is okay, and a lot of people stick with Dark Breath with her, because Dark Breath is actually pretty good, buffed up, but that would mean you might have to give her Distant Counter if you were worried about ranged threats. But you could always just go with Lightning Breath, but up to you. The build I've given her here, we're going to keep Dark Breath, refine it for speed, give her Reposition, Bonfire, Distant Counter, Wind Sweep, and a double Savage Blow build. I've never really built a Corrin, and I don't know how well the whole Wind Sweep and Savage Blow and debuff buff thing would work. But you could honestly just as easily run Lightning Breath and Quick Riposte if you want a more cookie cutter build, and you could just drop the Savage Blows for like buffs and stat boosts or whatever you need. She'd be pretty good at that too. For the Dolphin tier, I've selected Lucas. I have a pretty well built Lucas. I think he's +2 or 3 now. If you pick Lucas, you're going to be losing his Slaying Lance, Sacred Cowl, Fortress Defense, and Obstruct. So of course Lucas's main strength is he has amazing physical bulk, his defense is through the roof, and honestly his attack is really good too. So when it comes to tanking physical melee units, he's pretty much, you know, cream of the crop. His weaknesses, of course, are he has terrible resistance, terrible speed, and if he's going to respond to the ranged physical threats, he's going to need Distant Counter, so that's up to you. The build I gave Lucas, we gave him a Slaying Lance, refined it for defense, Reposition, Bonfire, Steady Breath, Guard, Attack Smoke, and Quick Riposte. Of course, you could just keep his Fortress Defense and run Ignis if you're not wanting to give him Steady Breath, and you could always drop Attack Smoke for a Threaten. But overall, I would suggest just making him a strong physical melee tank. He can take on axes if he wants to be honest. For our whale tier, I've selected Lind. If you are merging up Lind, you're going to lose out on her Aura, Ardent Sacrifice, Speed +3, and Fortify Resistance. Lind's strength, of course, is her amazing offensive spread. She has the best, I think, attack and speed spread of the blue mages. I could be wrong. She's right up there. She's also flexible with her tome choices. You can keep her Dark Aura, or you can give her a Blade Tome. Also, overall, she has decent resistance, so ploy skills aren't out of the question depending on her stats and your build. Weaknesses, though, overall her bulk isn't that good. Even, you know, her health is pretty low. Her defense, obviously, it doesn't even really matter. It's really low. So, don't expect her to be tanking too much. The build I've given her is a Blade Tome. You give her Ardent Sacrifice. You give her Glimmer, Brazen Attack and Speed, Desperation, Drive, Speed, and Heavy Blade. You can always just run a typical Fury or Life and Death build with her. Either way, I think Ardent Sacrifice is a good choice if you are running Desperation. Like I said, given her resistance, you could almost run a ploy skill, but I definitely wouldn't use Life and Death in that case. For our greens, for the free-to-play tier, I've selected Churchy. If you choose her, you're going to be missing out on her Hammer, Pivot, Attack +3, and Fortify Defense. So of course, her main strength is her offense. Her attack is one of the highest in the game. She honestly has pretty decent defense. Of course, as a flyer, she has access to their mobility and their buffs, and she can help her team get around easier. Of course, her main weaknesses are her low speed and her low resistance. Also, she's going to require pretty significant investment, whichever way you decide to go. If you go offensively, she's going to need, Brave Axe and Death Blow. If you go defensively, you're going to have to build up her Hammer and give her Quick Riposte, or, Close Defense, or something like that. Either way, she's going to need resources. But I suppose all of these units will. The build I've given her is pretty stereotypical. Brave Axe, Reposition, Glimmer, Death Blow, Hit and Run, Guidance, and Heavy Blade. And honestly, I feel like for the B skill, if you don't have a clear sitting around, you could always just give her Drag Back. Like I said, you could run her as a defense tank, just give her Hammer and Quick Riposte. Overall, this is a typical offensive build for her. For the Dolphin tier, I've gone with Soren. If you pick Soren, you're going to miss out on Rex Caliber, Growing Wind, Water Sweep, and Fortify Resistance. His strengths, he has decent offenses, and he has pretty decent magical bulk as well. And he becomes even tankier when you consider his tome debuffing, the highest attack enemy on team if you built his Wind brand up. Especially if you give it the Owl Tome effect, because then his ally standing around him will just boost his speed and defenses and attack even more. So this makes him more of an enemy phase unit if you want him to be. His weaknesses, of course, his physical bulk is pretty bad. Even with the tome effects, I wouldn't rely on him baiting in archers or daggers. But the build we've given Soren is the Winds brand, Drawback, Iceberg, Distant Defense, Quick Riposte, Drive Speed, and Res Ploy. Like I said, this makes him more of an enemy phase unit. With the Owl Tome, he can stack allies around him, or the Owl Tome effect, that is, and just, bait in units as he needs to. You might also just run Moonbow or Glimmer if you want guaranteed procs. It probably won't make a huge difference because his resistance isn't all that high. And if he is like plus speed, and if your ally's stacking, especially if you're running like Speed Ploy or something, you could probably ditch Quick Riposte. He probably won't even need it. For the whale tier, I've gone with Minerva. So if you pick Minerva here, you're going to miss out on her Sacred Cow, Life and Death, and Ward Flyers. Her strengths are, overall, she has a good offensive spread, especially if you keep her Life and Death. She has like Churchy Flyer, Mobility, and buffs, and she has a unique, very strong personal weapon. Her weaknesses, of course, she's pretty fragile, especially if you keep Life and Death, like I said, especially magically. The build I've given Minerva, we keep her native special weapon, we give her Reposition, Glimmer, Life and Death, Desperation, Guidance, and Speed +3. And like I mentioned, Life and Death will help her offenses, but of course make her more fragile, so you can always drop that if you want to make her more of a bruiser. Without Life and Death, her defense is pretty respectable. But if you do that, then I would move away from the Speed boost and Desperation and switch them out for something different. And if you're running her on a mixed team, then Guidance is a good idea, but obviously if you're running on Flyer Emblem, I'd just switch that out for her native Ward Flyers. So moving on to our colorless units, our free-to-play tier is Felicia, and if you pick her, you're going to miss out on her Silver Dagger, Glacies, Resistance +3, and Breath of Life. Her strengths, of course, are her high resistance and speed, and of course her new-ish special plate allows her to break through previously untouchable physical units. If they are pure physical units, they have bad resistance, and she'll be able to hit them pretty hard, since she can now target resistance. Her weaknesses, of course, is her attack, one of the lowest in the game. She leans really hard on her special because of this. Her Iceberg's going to hit really hard, but she really needs it to confirm kills. And another issue is her defense is low, so that does make it harder to fight those physical tanks I mentioned before, because they're typically going to be dealing physical damage for the most part. So while she might do more damage to them, she may not survive a hit from them, so you kind of have to be careful. The build I've given her, we keep her plate. We're going to actually just refine it for a stat boost instead of the special. I think that's going to be a bit more valuable. I'll talk about that in a second. But we also give her Reposition, Iceberg, Fury, Cancel Affinity, Defense Ploy, and Attack Ploy. So honestly, I don't think it's all that valuable to get the extra cooldown against magical units. It will help her get kills faster, but she honestly may not need the special to get a kill against frail mages. It may come in handy against dragons, but they're going to target her low defense typically anyway, so she might not survive against them, so she might not want to fight them. So I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up. It could come in handy against mixed bulk mages, for however many of those there are. You could also run Desperation instead of Cancel Affinity. Obviously, her speed's high enough to make good use of it. I would just give her Ardent Sacrifice in that case instead of Reposition. Our Dolphin tier, we're going to go with George. If you pick him, you're going to miss out on his Blazing Flame, Seal Attack, and Spur Speed. His strengths, overall, he is well-rounded, and like I said, that's kind of a strength, kind of not, depending on who you talk to. He has decent offensive spread. He's good against pretty much all range units, given his special weapon. So he's a good anti-ranged range unit. And George's weaknesses, well, his defenses are okay, but they're honestly not great. Like I said, he's well-rounded, but his defenses are low enough to be kind of fragile. He struggles against melee units altogether, especially dragons. They're going to give him trouble since they tend to have higher defense. But like I said, he mostly wants to fight mages and bows and daggers, I feel like. The build that I would give him, keep his Parthia, give it its special refinement. We're going to give him Reciprocal Aid, Moonbow, Fury, Quicker Post, Spur Speed, and Distant Defense. Typically, I don't like running Fury and Quicker Post. I just couldn't really think of a whole lot of better options in this case. You could also try just a double Distant Defense build, put in his A slot and his S slot. Or instead of Quicker Post, you could give him Bowbreaker and make him more of just a, dedicated anti-range specialized, unit, or like a specific Tome Breaker, Dagger Breaker if you're worried about him. As for his C slot, I just kept his Spur Speed. You could switch it out for a lot of things, just kind of depending on what buffs your team might need. Then for our whale tier, I went with Elise. So if you pick Elise here, you're going to miss out on her Gravity Plus, Recover Plus, Kindled Firebomb, and Live to Serve. Elise's strengths are, as a mounted unit, she is going to have Horse Mobility, which is handy. She has one of the best offensive spreads for a healer. And overall, she has good utility because, like I said, she's a healer. Not much else to it. And with Gravity Plus, that makes her even more handy and kind of annoying. Her weaknesses, overall, she's very frail. In order to deal effective damage, she needs not only to have her staff refined, she's also going to need whatever opposite staff buff or passive that she doesn't have on her staff. She needs Wrathful and Dazzling staff to do effective damage safely. The build I've given her here, we keep her Gravity Plus, we give that the Dazzle effect, we keep her Recover Plus, we're going to give her Miracle for her special, Attack plus 3, Wrathful Staff, and Double Savage Blow for the C and S slot. So, like I mentioned, she wants both the Razzle and Dazzle effect, but you could switch it around as you need to. You could also give her Brazen Attack Speed if you want to. It's going to help her out conditionally, as long as she's able to get below 80% safely. But if you just want all-time offensive help, I would just give her a stat boost. And for her special, Miracle isn't necessary, but I think it's helpful since with this build she has no way to up her own health, so this will help her stay alive a little longer. So of these 12 units, I've kind of looked at them and moved them around and shuffled and this and that. I've kind of put them together into 3 different teams of 4 based on their strengths and weaknesses. So our first team, I've put together Draug, Lind, Minerva, and George. So Draug's big weakness, of course, is going to be magic, especially blues, but he can handle green physical units and swords okay. Minerva offensively can take care of most of the blues that Draug is worried about, but red units, especially red mages, are going to give her trouble, and Lind can take care of those red units that would give Minerva trouble, and of course Draug will help her out against the axes and whatever green units that would give her trouble. And overall, with these 3 units, there isn't anyone who wants to take on range units all that much. Lind can take care of mages somewhat well, but I think George is going to round out the team well as a good anti-range specialist. Our second team, I put together Young Tiki, Lucas, Churchy, and Felicia. So Young Tiki is going to struggle against most blue units. She has pretty good mixed bulk, so she can handle pretty much any green unit. And Churchy has the offenses to come in and take out any of the blue units that might give Tiki trouble. If they're magic dealers, she might have a little more issue. But of course, Churchy, particularly worries about red and green mages. And then the physical red and blue units that Tiki and Churchy might worry about, Lucas can easily take care of them. And you'll see overall the trend here is, for the most part, I worry about magic units with this team. Lucas and Churchy have really bad resistance, and Tiki, she has okay resistance, but it's not that great. So I think Felicia would round out this team pretty well, given that she can easily tank magical units, just so long as she doesn't have to take any physical damage, which the rest of her team can easily, happily take care of. And then the last team we have here is Erica, female Corrin, Soren, and Elise. So Erica, kind of like Young Tiki, has decent mixed bulk, so she doesn't want to fight blues, but she'll happily fight greens. Soren can take care of any of those blues, as long as they're low resistance. If they're doing magic damage, he'll have an even easier time. But of course he worries about any red unit really, especially physical. Swords are going to give him a lot of issue. Corrin can take care of those swords. But of course, greens are going to give her trouble, especially mages. Even blue mages might give her some trouble, so luckily Soren's there and Erica's there to help her out. And then Elise is just kind of here because she's the last unit left, but she can her chip damage will come in handy with this team because Overall, the attack's not all that high. Soren's got pretty good offenses, but the other two maybe not so much. So her Savage Gravity combo might come in handy a little more so here against the really tanky units. And as always with those 3 teams, they're designed so you can kind of just pluck one unit out and put it in a bonus unit if you really need to. I know a lot of people just have a 3-man core, so it's sort of designed in that aspect. So that'll be all for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope maybe you learned a little something. Hopefully I gave you some ideas on some units you might want to bring to your arena team. Start working on merging them up to +10. It's honestly just really helpful to have highly merged units sitting around. It's a big feather investment. It takes a lot of time, but overall it's worth it. So thanks again. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.